Welcome to another episode of the 6 Degrees of Leadership, the podcast where we explore the interconnected world of leadership and success. I'm your host, Brian Hendricks, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, I want to take a moment to remind our listeners about a valuable resource that has been transforming the communication skills game and leadership journeys across the world. If you're looking to elevate your communication game and unlock the secrets to effective and versatile leadership, look no further than the book, The Communicator's Playbook. Written by yours truly, The Communicator's Playbook is a best selling guide packed with practical strategies, insightful tips, and real world examples to help you master the art of communication in any situation, whether you're leading a team, presenting to a boardroom, or simply aiming to enhance your interpersonal skills. This book has got you covered. You can grab your copy today on Amazon and start your journey towards becoming a more confident and influential communicator. Don't miss out on this opportunity to level up your leadership game with the Communicator's Playbook. Now, let's jump into today's episode where I interview Ben Zang, a former restaurant and hotel manager, speaker, consultant, and honestly, so much more, about the recipe of a team. Now sit back and enjoy the 6 Degrees of Leadership. Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the 6 Degrees of Leadership. As always, I'm your host, Brian Hendricks. And as you heard in the intro, I'm very excited for today because we are meeting with someone who has really become a close friend of mine over the last year, someone who I talked to about business, about leadership, about faith, about being a dad, about lots of different things. Ben Zang. Ben, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Dude, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Our conversations off air are always so much fun. I'm sure this will be no different. So this will be great.
Yes. Yeah, I love that we were talking earlier. Like, we should just start a podcast about just how we talk to each other because it goes in so many different directions. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
actually talk to you and hone in on a topic today, which is going to be very
sure.
different for you and I think.
Very different. So yeah, but no, I'm
Yes.
looking forward to it.
Yeah. So the topic today that we're going to be talking about is recipe of a team. That's been a big thing
Yeah.
that I've seen with leaders so far over the past really since COVID too, is how do I build a team? How do I get not just build a team, but a high performing team? How do I continue to grow and develop that team? So, we're going to get deep into that. But before we do that, the first question I ask all the guests, because I love hearing people's origin story. From a superhero standpoint, every superhero starts somewhere and every superhero starts different. And I think that's so important from a leadership perspective is we all have different backgrounds that have gotten us to a role of leadership. So, Ben, what is your leadership origin story?
You talked to me, kind of hurt me for that question, but I think it begins because I was an oldest child. I mean, in all honesty, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where leadership kind of began, right? And I'm of
Mm-hmm.
the Generation X, so we were left alone quite a bit. So I was responsible for two other kids,
Everybody, yeah,
probably in a time
absolutely.
when, where it was normal, but wouldn't be normal now. And
Yeah.
so I always was just very responsible with that kind of stuff. So I remember being 13 and basically having the keys to a retail store. Like
Yep.
so people just seem to trust me. So I think that's been a big part of the leadership. And then, I owned businesses and did consulting and things like that. And I think I've been naturally curious. And so that curiosity and ability to speak has been kind of a hallmark of how I got to be a leader.
Yeah.
I was a VP in a nonprofit, and the next thing I know, I was the president. My Rotary asked, "Hey," they're like, "Hey, you talk really well, and you come and you show up." And I think that's a big part of leadership, right? Is showing up and
Mm-hmm.
being available. So, I'm president-elect of that. So,
Yeah.
um, the whole being thrust upon you, I think, kind of sums it up in a sense. But
Yeah.
um, I think when you care, you end up having leadership just because you care.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really unique perspective too, because I know I see this a lot with people is you you're in a leadership position because you're really good at the hard skills or the job. Or you're in a leadership position, as you said, because you just show up, right? You're there. So you do the job, you get the job, you care. So then you're in a leadership position. And yet no one ever teaches you how to be a leader. So
Yeah.
unless you go through some formal training, like you said, you kind of trial by fire, trial and error to get into that position.
Yeah. And I think when you're naturally curious, and I think failure is a big part of that, right? So if you're a
Mhm.
leader and your failures are up on the public screen, it's a big motivator to learn what you need to learn and learn it quickly and learn it
Mhm.
deeply, right? There's
Right.
you get to that consciousness real quick, right?
Yes. You realize
So
what you know and what you don't know pretty fast, and you want to
yeah,
grow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that one again, but I think it relates to the team you put around you too. So I know you're
Mhm.
heading that way, but I,
Yeah. No, I say
it
go
has a
go
lot to
into
do
it.
with it.
I think go into that.
Well,
Like, when you think about building a team, because that's
mhm.
part of it, is you're the leader. So now you have to build a team, for all those people that are in that process right now. Like, how do you build, like, we call it recipe for a team. Like, what are the ingredients to you that make up a really good team?
Yeah, and I think cooking's a great example of it, right? So I think when you're doing, chicken, everybody knows chicken, right? But there's a million recipes for chicken. And there's always ingredients and notes in that flavor profile you got to hit, right? And so I think leadership and teamwork, and if you're trying to build any kind of creation, you need certain people who are super detail oriented. For them, the and they like to think of themselves as big picture people. And right, and I
Yep.
had I had this woman I worked very closely with. She was very good at what she did, and she's like, "I'm a big picture person," and I said, "You are not a big picture person." And and at first she was kind of taken back, and I said, "You see a detail in a very big picture." And that kind of changed her perspective on things. And I
Mhm.
was like, the how those details work inside the machine, so to speak, is
Yep.
not where your forte is. But that
Right.
detail is so crystal clear to you. It's such a big picture. And that's what makes you so good at these kinds of skills. And I think you
Mhm.
have to have those people who do it, right? And so
Yeah.
I am naturally gifted at conveying ideas, telling stories, lining people up. Um, Details in that specificity, not my strong suit, right?
Right.
I could do it, but then I lose all the other gifts, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
so I think when you build a team, everybody wants to build a team of superstars. The problem
Yes.
is if you build a team of superstars, nobody's taking care of the details your superstars aren't necessarily great at. You need a
Right.
superstar detail person, a superstar talker, a
Mhm.
superstar organizer, a
Mhm.
superstar filer of things. Like those are the kinds of things, and you have to see where people deeply care about stuff, right? And I
Yep.
think that's the biggest part of building your team is finding people that care about the details of the recipe,
Mhm.
right? And everybody's going to have their own flavor. It's funny, you have sometimes there's the conflict between the salespeople and the service people, right?
Right.
The people who
Mhm.
are actually building the thing and the people selling the thing.
So, yes.
And you need somebody to be able to bridge those two skill sets and be able to talk to one another to line up the vision. And I think that's
Mhm.
what good leaders do is have the ability to get everybody on the same page and have it all think like they're doing their thing. And that's the most important thing. Even
Mhm.
though there may be 10, 15 things
Right.
that those people feel like their thing is the most important thing and
Mhm.
it pushing through. And I
Yeah.
think good leaders facilitate that.
So I want to take that a next step further because you talked about
Mhm.
a lot of times within teams, like, okay, my job is to make you feel the most important, you feel the most important, and which is great, but you're still going to have some of that conflict, between sales and service, between
Yeah.
customer relations and, everything. So to me, that's an idea of that's a trust issue. I think trust is one of the most important things in between departments of a organization, of a team. So, for someone who's built many teams in your life, how do you facilitate trust, not just in you, the leader, but how do you get your team to trust one another so then they're able to become a high performing team?
I think the biggest thing is not trust in one another, but trust in the vision.
Okay.
And I think as soon as people start looking at one another, I think that becomes problematic.
Yeah.
But if everybody's faced towards the vision, then it's what's best for the vision. It's not what's best for service. It's not what's best for sales. It's what's best for the vision. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not the, sometimes it's neither. It's not great for sales or for service.
Right.
It serves the vision better.
Mhm.
And I think once people get behind that, and I think that's one of the hardest things for a leader is like I did a show where, and I don't know if I did a great job explaining this, but a business owner's first priority is to be profitable.
Mhm.
And part of that profit is getting your people to buy the very thing you're selling. And
Mhm.
that's that vision, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where conflict falls away when everybody's pulling in the same direction towards a vision.
Mhm. I want to talk about that idea of vision because
Mhm.
I hear that a lot. I hear mission and vision. I always talk with my clients about mission, vision, and principles, MVP.
Yeah.
When it comes to team building, I think, and I want you to kind of go and give your opinion on this, but anyone can go into an organization and say, hey, here's our mission. It's written on the wall.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at specific teams within that organization, how do you kind of get them to build their own team vision? How do you get them to say, look, our mission and vision of an organization is this. Our department, here's our vision that supports that. And how much say do you give the team members in creating that vision?
So, yeah, that's an awesome question. There's a lot there too. So,
Yes. Yes.
um, I think when you talk about how you create that, it's your service people, they want to be of service.
Mm.
Your selling people want to hit a goal and smash it,
Yep.
right? And so you define it in their love language, in a sense. I mean, you heard
Like
like
it.
love
Yeah.
language, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody's got their own language of how they talk and what is important. You'll get those
Mhm.
people that'll be like, I just feel like we're not going in the right direction.
Right. Hmm.
Right. And so then you're like, we, then you have to talk to them in those kind of feeling things. I
Yep.
thought this was
Hmm.
going to be different. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's talk in that language. Like people tell you what's important to you by the articulation that they use,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the big things. And I think two parts to that question. I'm trying to remember the second
Yeah.
part.
So, as you're building this vision of your department, your team, how much
Yeah.
say do you give the team members
Oh
in
yeah.
building and
Yeah.
creating that vision?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that back.
Yeah.
So I had a rule. I'm like best idea wins.
Okay.
I think
I
when you
like
go
it.
back to the vision, if we're serving the vision, it's a meritocracy. And
Okay.
so, early in my career, I owned a restaurant and a hotel. And
Mhm.
so I'd have a chef say, well, that's not the way you do it. And I'm like, I don't care the way I do it. The way I do it, I think is the best idea so far. And
Right.
it's always
Right.
best idea so far, right? And so I'm like, if you got a better way, tell me your better way. And then I say, before you tell me though, I'm going to tell you all the problems with how
Mhm.
you've told what you've told me. And
Yes.
if we can work together and get around those things, and that's the best way,
Mhm.
then let's do it. Right? Because there's a way you're doing things, and it's always the way we did them, right?
Yes.
Well, there
Oh,
was a
it's some of the words
reason
I hate. Yeah.
right, but there's a reason you did it that way to begin with,
Yes. Hmm.
right? And so it's usually to work around some kind of obstacle in the system.
Right.
And so is that obstacle still there? That's the part people
Mhm.
forget. They forgot why they started doing it that way.
Right.
And if later on, like I've had it where I've coached somebody and they'd be like, "Oh, that's always been the way we've done it." And I'm like, "Well, do we need to continue doing it?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know." And so they asked the team and they're
Mhm.
like, "Well, why did you do it that way?" And they're like, "Oh, because computers weren't invented yet." Like they had been doing it so long. Like you're like,
Yep.
"Well, that's why." Okay,
Right.
well, there's these things called computers and the internet now. So why don't we change our system, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
But it's funny how we get our whole uh psychological makeup is designed to get things automated and so quickly, right? That's
Mhm.
what's the name of that? It's the thick fold of the brain, but basically that area designed to, that's why we don't have to think about breathing, right? It gets pushed
Yep.
into that area.
It's the subconscious, just
Organizations have,
natural
yeah,
reaction. Yep.
yeah. Organizations have their own subconscious, sometimes
Yes.
in their habits and things like that. And so you have to kind of look at that. And if you look at that in the lens of what are we trying to do here? You
Right.
know, how are we trying to help people? I think the best organizations are always trying to help people. They're trying
Mhm.
to solve something for people, right? And
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
if you look at it through that lens, then everything kind of becomes really clear. Oh, we can't help as many people because we write stuff down instead of put it into a spreadsheet that
Mhm.
is
Right.
organized, or
Right.
nobody has the same info. So how can we help people when nobody has the same info, right? So
Mhm.
it's always that kind of, how do we help people, or how can we do, and it's always focused in some kind of range, right?
Right. Right. It has to be. Well, and I want to just real quick go back to something you said because it really stuck out with me. It's like, well, we do it my way because it's the best way right now, or for now. What was the exact
For
wording you
now.
said? For now.
Yeah,
For
for
now.
now.
Yeah, it's right way for now. I think that is huge from a leadership standpoint because you're open to, hey, this is the right way for now. Do you have better options? Do you have better? Now, my question off of that is, we talked about trust earlier. Is how do you build a willingness to openly communicate to a leader? Because a lot of times, what I hear is, hey, let me know what I'm doing wrong, as from a leadership standpoint. Hey, let me know
Yeah.
what you need more of. And people are so afraid just based on not necessarily the organizational culture, sometimes it is, but just
Mhm.
our culture here in the United States of, oh, Ben's my boss. I can't tell him he's doing anything wrong. Ben, you're great and wonderful.
Yeah.
How do you build a company or a team where you have that open communication where it's like, hey, it's the best way for now. Do you have a different idea? What does it look like?
Yeah, that's a good, I think that's always the struggle, right?
Ah,
As any
hmm.
leader would tell you. But I think, like Gary Vee talks about having meetings with his people just to find out where they want to go,
Hmm. Right.
right? What they want to do in their lives, things like
Yep.
that. And so, and he talks about the fact that if people understand that you care, then they're going to care about you. And
Mhm.
so I think the most honest feedback I've gotten are from those people that understood how much I cared about them. Because then
Yep.
it's a reciprocal relationship and it builds that trust. But from an
Yes.
organizational standpoint, I think it has to be communicated. And I think you
Mhm.
as a leader have to say, hey guys, look, I screwed this up. I need help,
Yes. Mhm.
right? We're all pulling in the same direction,
Mhm.
and yeah, I may be steering the boat, but that's because I've worked every position, so I understand how the boat works.
Right.
But it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I'm right all the time. And so, Steve Jobs, there's always the cliche things like Steve Jobs said, hire people smarter than you and get out of
Right.
their way,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Don't be the smartest person in the room. All those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes the most vocal people are not necessarily the smartest people in the room. Like they're smart enough to listen
Hmm.
when they, and I think part of your job as a leader is to understand that you're going to have to coax some of that out. You're going to have to talk to it. And those things that there's always that kind of squeaky wheel in any
Yep.
organization, like
Hmm.
we're flat here, we're this. And I
Yeah.
think if you come down and you say, off of your high horse or high tower, or however you
Right.
want to
Right.
say it,
Exactly.
I
Yep.
have ridden into my horse to
Yeah.
talk to people, right? And if you
The
just,
guys who have the office above everybody and they're
yeah,
looking down at their plant workers. Yes.
yeah. And if you say, hey, look, this part of the machine is broken,
Mhm.
and I know you're in charge of it. So
Mhm.
tell me what the frustrations are. Because something is,
No.
from there's it's a metaphysical saying, but it says disease is caused by the true, the good, and the beautiful.
Okay.
And then it
Oh, I
kind of
like
makes
that.
your face go, what, why? Why would that be the cause of
Right.
disease?
Right.
And it's where it gets blocked in the body. Disease
Ah.
is where it gets blocked in the body.
Fuck.
So,
Yeah.
not to be too spiritual, but I think organizations work that way too. It's where
Yeah.
some kind of true, some kind of good system, some kind of beautiful gets blocked within an
Right.
organization.
Mm-hmm.
So And invariably, it just shows up, right?
Right.
If you walk funny because your ankle's not working,
Right.
it's evident something is wrong in that area of the body. So
Yes.
so I
Okay.
think good leader is one who goes, hey, we're walking funny. Let's go
Yeah.
talk to the ankle, see what's going
Mhm.
on.
Yeah.
And the ankle's like, well, these toes don't grip, the foot's not
Right.
bending, and the
Uh-huh.
knee is lazy on Saturdays, right? So
Right. Exactly. Yes.
we gotta
Right.
fix this.
We got
Yeah,
right. So instead of just, the brain saying, "Oh, I can fix everything on my own,"
yeah,
let's go to the source and figure out what's going on, and then give them
yeah,
power to give me a response, and not just complain, but what do you think is the solution? You're the subject matter expert.
yeah. And I think you have to like think when you talk about trust, if you go back to
Yeah.
empowering their people, and
Yep.
when I was coaching people underneath me, when
Mhm.
they made a decision, I was like, you made a decision, that is awesome. Tell me why
Okay.
you made the decision you made.
Mhm.
And then if their reasons are sound for the decision they made,
Yeah.
then I praised it and I said, I see why you made that decision. Here's another
Mhm.
piece to consider that you just missed. And then they'd be like, "Oh yeah." And I'm
I
like,
get
"Do you
it.
have any what thoughts do you have now? Now that you
Yep.
missed that we had that into the equation." And then
Mhm.
suddenly a new answer arrives, right?
Yeah.
Or if they thought about it wrong, they're like, "Well, I just didn't want to get in trouble." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't care about trouble. I don't You're not
Right.
going to get in trouble. I need you to take care of these things that fall in your purview.
Right.
They're yours. I want you to care about them as much as I care about them.
Mhm.
And as long as you come at it from that direction, you and I will be fine,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
I think that's what people want. Is people want to feel empowered and they want to be able to do the thing that they know.
Yes, I totally agree. And that's a great segue into my next question for you on this is
Okay?
because people want to be right. People want to
Mhm.
be praised when they should be praised. I highly believe people don't want to be praised when it's not worth it.
Yep.
But I would say, and I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the questions I get asked the most by leaders, whether it's exec levels or team leads, trainers on the floor, whatever,
Mhm.
is we have this group of individuals and we want to celebrate them more. Or we have high turnover rate. How do we keep people? How do we get employees engaged? And to me, it has to start at that team level, obviously. So I guess the question comes in, you talked about, hey, you praise when they make a decision and then you show them alternate routes. But like, what are some of the practical things that you have seen or maybe you've done with your teams that
Mhm.
is giving them that positive reinforcement, that is showing that you care? Everyone says, oh, well, pizza lunch doesn't do it anymore. It's like, well, just pizza lunch won't do it, but a pizza lunch every once in a while. Plus, what are those pluses that our listeners can actually do with their teams?
I think it's showing care. It's caring about your folks, right?
Mhm.
So, um, I had a great employee who just wanted to grow in his career.
Yeah.
And even if that growth took him away from the company he was building, I wanted him to have that thing. So we would talk about, okay, when you run your own, this is how you should think about it. Or
Mm-hmm.
hey, when you own your own stuff,
Yeah.
this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
I know you're just focused in this area, but let's look at this other area too, because I know your goal is to get where I'm at,
That's huge. Yep.
And so when people feel like you're investing in them, then they'll
Mhm.
invest back.
Yeah.
And I think turnover, depending on how it looks,
Mhm.
and why it's happening, isn't
Mhm.
necessarily a bad thing. If
Right.
people
Mhm.
outgrow my organization and they go somewhere else and
Mhm.
they find success there,
Mhm.
then that's a good thing. That whole,
Yep.
a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
I think
Absolutely.
there's a lot and then there are those that just want to do their job and go home,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so how do
Mhm.
we protect that space for them?
Right.
But I think
Mhm.
it starts with finding out what their priorities are and how do you do that? And it's hard too, like when you like, okay, I'm a CEO, I've got 500 employees and somebody
Yeah.
just makes widgets for me. Do I need to go and talk
Mhm.
to all 500 employees?
Right.
No. I mean, that'd be great
Right.
if
Like
you
that's the
could, but
ideal.
how do you
Right.
CEO in that state,
Right.
right?
Right. Exactly.
So then and if you think about like the pebble in the pond theory, the ripple
Yeah.
effect,
Yep.
if
Hmm.
you create a pebble and you can show the people around you you care, and then say, this is how we do it. So now you
Mm-hmm.
take your next circle and you take your next circle and you
Yep.
create a culture that creates that kind of growth mindset. And then you convey it in the ways you do it, you know. Maybe
Mhm.
Pizza Friday isn't that big of a deal for people, but it is if the CEO shows up,
Like that. Hmm.
it is if the person that like I early in my career, I was a general manager at a restaurant. Well, one night we got slammed and they found me in the dish pit.
Yeah.
And
I like
I
that.
can't
Hmm.
tell you what that did for the kitchen guys. And I
Hmm.
was brand new at the job. I think it was like my third day. And the
Oh, yeah.
servers were doing really well. Everything was going really well up front. But the thing we needed was dishes. And they had pulled the dishwasher to prep salads. So I just started washing dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, why are you washing dishes? I'm like, because they need to be done. And I think there are easy ways for people to show that no job is too small. There are
Right.
no small jobs, just small people. And
Right.
if you show
Right.
yourself to be a small person, nobody's
Mhm.
following you,
No.
right?
No, not at all.
Just
Well, and I think that's
yeah,
such great advice. Kind of as we start to wrap up here, is it's you don't need to do a big showy thing to show appreciation. Big showy things that's going to work for some people, but just making those personal connections. I tell people all the time, a simple thank you from a CEO, from a senior level leader, that goes so far, and it doesn't take long to do it. It's not a hard thing, but hey, we appreciate everything you do, because if you didn't do that, I wouldn't be in the position I'm at. And having that
yeah,
small recognition.
yeah. The one thing I would add on that is I
Yeah.
think people want to be seen. And I
Yes.
think from a deeply personal value, I think we're put on this earth to bear witness to one another.
Mm.
And so I think if you bear witness to the people around you, they'll bear witness to you.
Yeah.
So how you do that is how you'll do everything.
Yep. Yeah. One of my mentors says, how you do the small things is how you do everything. And it's
Yeah.
it's 100% spot on.
Yeah.
All right, so the last question I have for you, Ben. I asked this of all
Okay.
my guests, and it's where the idea of 6 degrees of leadership comes from, is that
Yeah.
just like Kevin Bacon, we're all connected in some way, shape, or form. So,
Yeah.
are there two people that I can reach out to get on the show, but then also our listeners can start looking at and researching and kind of figuring out, hey, this is a great leader who's impacted you in your life.
I think there are a number, and so I may
Yeah.
cheat and overachieve and maybe give you a
You
couple
can
of
give
names,
me as
but
much as you want. Yeah.
Brad Herta does a great blue collar
Mhm.
podcast. I think his perspective on leadership and his ability to work with organizations and grow them
Mhm.
is second to none. There's a financial advisor who um, I have the same kind of talks I have with you, right?
Yeah.
And um, he's done a lot of different roles within that industry. And I think when you're helping people grow their investments,
Mhm.
leadership kind of comes right through there. And Nate Fair, and
Yep.
then and I know you know Shelley Dretzka, but Shelley
Yeah.
Dretzka is an HR consultant, and so her whole one of her big focuses is building culture and teams. So I think
Mhm.
those three are probably the three I would say right off the bat. There's a number of
That's
them who do
yeah.
that kind of stuff, but yeah,
Yeah. Those are three good starting points to get them on and
yeah,
learn from them. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Have me again, and I'll have another three names.
Yeah,
So
exactly. There you go. It's perfect. Yeah.
if that
Well,
helps me get back on this. So
yeah. I was gonna say, Ben, between you and we could probably do multiple episodes of this and just keep digging just on teamwork. And we haven't touched on anything else. I mean, there's so much that goes and
yeah,
revolves around just building a team. So I appreciate your time. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for the listeners to get in touch with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You'll see me on LinkedIn. You can email me. My cell phone is 414-614-7854. Like I believe in access, right?
Yeah.
So emails ben@thbwi.com. So I'm a benefits broker by trade. So I
Mhm.
teach people how to take care of people. So
Yeah.
it's kind of where it all comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's awesome. And everybody will put all that into the show notes so you'll have access to Ben and reach out to him. Like, he's a benefits broker right now, which he's very good at. He also has done a lot of different things in his life, which we just kind of touched the surface on today. So,
yeah, there's a little bit of a gypsy in me. So yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yes. Which is why I think we get along so well.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Brian, it's been amazing. So
Great. Thank you. Well,
yeah,
everybody,
big
have a
fan.
great rest of your days and make sure to like, subscribe, and reach out to Ben because he dropped a couple nuggets today. He's got a lot more in that head. I've stolen a bunch from him. So have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the 6 Degrees of
Thanks,
Leadership.
Brian. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Before we get to the final word, first, a message from our sponsors, Sales Rescue. Are you ready to skyrocket your profits? Sales Rescue is here to transform your business's sales strategy with proven success. At rescuemysales.com, they turn the frustration of missed targets into the thrill of exceeding goals, empowering you to not only meet, but surpass your sales ambitions, leading to growth and profitability. Exclusively for listeners of the 6 Degrees of Leadership podcast, you can claim your free sales rescue consultation today and their Sales Rescue AI playbook to start your journey to sales excellence. But hurry, this free offer is only available for a limited time. Visit rescuemysales.com now. That's rescuemysales.com. Don't miss this free opportunity at Sales Rescue, where we rescue your sales and rocket your profits. And that wraps up another insightful episode of the 6 Degrees of Leadership. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion as much as I did. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave you with a reminder to go check out my best selling book, The Communicator's Playbook. Head over to Amazon now and get your copy if you haven't already. Thank you for tuning in today. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the 6 Degrees of Leadership for more inspiring conversations and valuable insights. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep making a difference.